Breath of the Wild was a phenomenal success and is often seen as a landmark game for the history of game design. The game's open world structure, sound, and visual design are still standouts in the video game world, and the sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, is set to release for this summer. But the game can be seen as something else, a medium.
A medium can be defined as something in between, what makes thoughts, words, images, symbols, or behaviors move between one place to another. These things move through Breath of the Wild to you, the player. We see this medium in different ways, using concepts and ideas from various thinkers throughout history.
Marshall McLuhan famously stated that the medium is the message. In simple terms, it means that the mediums or technologies we use matter more than the content. Extending this, McLuhan argues that using a medium changes the way we interact with it. This concept of the media environment tells us that we get enveloped in the mediums we use and adapt to them. In this case, the video game. We have to change for the game rather than it changing for us. Now, what does this matter to Breath of the Wild? Well, it explains a lot about how we play the game. We're placed into Hyrule without knowing how the world operates, and we start messing with it. But we have to adapt to the game on its terms. For example, every player knows that Link can't climb when it rains. But instead of the rain just stopping when we climb, or Link having strong enough legs to power through it, the player has to learn and adapt to that aspect of the game permanently. But people also shape the mediums that they use, in the same way that they shape us. Players in Breath of the Wild are always doing something crazy and creative, taking the medium of the game to the extremes. The best example of this co-shaping, as McLuhan puts it, is seen when players used Link's magnetic powers to fly in Breath of the Wild. But this exact concept was shown in trailers for the game's sequel as a new feature. McLuhan shows us that we are not separate from the mediums we use, but he only applies this to the form of a video game itself. But how does Breath of the Wild show the player its ideals?
Breath of the Wild is more than just some video game. It's a representation of a text, something that has meaning. When a player sets out to navigate the intricacies of the story, they introduce different forms of text that change the way they think or decode the game. Here, the player is shown many different signs through the game's user interface. Saussure was the first to describe this kind of division of the sign, and he noted two parts: the signifier and the signified. The signifier is the element that is presented to the audience, whereas the signified is the meaning that is conveyed by the signifier. For example, Link's hearts, the stamina wheel, and map icons are signifiers that represent different signifieds, such as health, endurance, or game objectives. But Breath of the Wild also uses signifiers that take place within the game's setting as well. When Link runs low on stamina, the concept of his exhaustion is portrayed by his heavy breathing. Link's exhaustion is a signified, while his panting and sluggish movement is a signifier. All of these concepts combined together shapes the player's understanding of the world. This is ideology. The main ideology portrayed here is heroism. Through the process of signification, the player creates a binary opposition between enemies and allies. It is seen in the narrative element of the game as well, where Link has to fight against what's shown to be evil to restore the kingdom of Hyrule. So why would all of this matter? Through the process of commodification, we have associated them with a particular use and exchange value, making it a commodity.
When looking at Breath of the Wild as a product, it's easy to see how successful it was. It was a game 5 years in the making that had multiple delays in production, but it ended up working out well, as its launch aligned with the release of Nintendo's new console, the Switch. Back in 2017, when Breath of the Wild and the Switch launched, fans would call it a quote-unquote Zelda machine due to how many people were buying it just to play Breath of the Wild, and it shows in the game's sales that it was a huge deal. You can even see in-game that this was meant to be played on the Switch, as the game's most important item, the Sheikah Slate, is modeled after it. Seeing Link constantly use it just reinforces the idea that this is a game that should be played on the Switch. However, it's not only its sales that mattered. Breath of the Wild is a game that had a production cycle that was influenced by multiple sources, taking different elements from both Toyotism and the postmodern media age. Postmodern production is defined by two key things: immaterial services and information. Nintendo, however, is uncharacteristically closed off from most outside sources of information, generally ignoring the consumer for the most part, while their products remain immaterial. After the somewhat negative consumer response to the previous Zelda game, Nintendo decided to listen to the feedback, finally dipping their toes into the main concept introduced by Toyotism: reacting to the market. The result was that Breath of the Wild ended up being a radically different game from the rest of the Zelda franchise, due to Nintendo reinventing the Zelda formula, and they ended up making a game that redefined a genre.
Breath of the Wild is much more than just a video game. It's a piece of technology, a text, and a commodity that shapes us in different ways. But when it comes to mediums that are supposedly made for entertainment, like video games, it's important to see where we, the players, end and where the medium begins.